So we're in the podcast.
Let's podcast.
Podcast. All right. So welcome to The Breakdown, a Music Mondays exclusive segment, or as I like to call it, a podcast. I am joined in studio today by Lil G Mills. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here.
We are sitting face to face right now. I swear to God.
3 inches away from each other.
Using the same microphone.
Not even breaking eye contact.
No, it's really, my eyes are going to water soon, I think.
I want the audience to feel the intensity of this entire session.
Ooh.
It's like we're both staring into your eyes.
I was actually like staring into Audacity with the intensity that I would have if we were actually in person doing that bit, and it was pretty intense.
The ideal conditions for listening to this podcast will be in a sensory deprivation chamber. Do not allow any light or auditory stimuli except for the sound of our voices reach you. And turn off your fucking cell phone.
Turn off your goddamn phone. Actually, put your phone on airplane.
You should be watching this
when you're done
on
with
a
the
theater
podcast.
screen.
You better be at the goddamn IMAX.
This is James Cameron's vision as he intended it. A fully immersive podcast on the planet Pandora.
Oh. And we're all blue.
We are both blue.
Yes.
So now that we have to cut all of that out.
No, I'm going to keep that in because much like this podcast, you should do all of those same things when you listen to your hit album. And by your, I mean yours, Laura.
That's right.
Your hit album.
It's a hit.
I Followed the River.
Sold about
which we are here to discuss.
8 copies so far. So I'm thinking of going pro, thinking of making physicals. I am thinking about making physicals, actually. But anyway, stream my album, please.
And then buy it on Bandcamp.
Please, for the love of God, buy it on Bandcamp. I'm starving.
Or purchase a hand-dubbed tape at some point, perhaps.
You know, go to the store, buy a Wilson baseball glove, one of those brand new ones, send it to me, and I will eat it. I am so hungry for leather. Those things aren't made out of leather anymore. They're made out of fake leather. They're made out of oil. They're made out of plastic.
Yeah, that's why I eat them now, because they're vegan.
That's right. Hold on a second. Oil isn't vegan. It's made out of dinosaurs. What is the statute of limitations on veganism? How long does something have to go under a carbonation process? I don't know what process you make oil, petroleum out of. It takes a long time. Turns you into carbon.
But yeah, that's a really fair point. Because I was a vegan for many years, and I still got my gasoline.
I was a vegan for a year
BP.
as well.
Yeah, I still got my gasoline at BP, which people did roast me for going to BP specifically, but I had a credit card there, and I got cents off the gallon.
I think that balances it out and makes it ethical again.
Yeah, because I was saving money.
Right.
It was in my best interest. And
that's the first priority of all ethics is self-interest. That's the guiding principle of moral action. What's good for me? Fuck dinosaurs. Anyway,
they're already dead.
That's a good point. We didn't kill the fucking dinosaurs.
I didn't kill the dinosaurs.
We didn't add any cruelty to the world by just sucking up that petroleum from the ground, putting it in our shakes.
Doing them a favor. We're putting their dead bodies to use.
That's right. Just like all of those pigs that we shovel into a slaughterhouse every day.
Every time I throw away chicken at work, I think about how that chicken died in vain. Like, nobody even ate that. It just went in the trash.
It's fucking sad. It's horrible.
It's fucked up. Yeah, because I'm fine with eating meat, but throwing it away, that's where I draw the line.
Food waste does feel like a uniquely awful fate for a living body to have. Like, obviously, eating meat isn't much better than just throwing it away. But I mean, yeah, at least you get to taste it. There's something ritual about it.
There's a purpose served to it. It's not just like, yeah, we birthed you, we raised you, we slaughtered you, and then we just put you in the trash.
Maybe they're exactly as human as each other. Who knows?
God, what an intro. This is giving me anxiety.
Yeah, who wants to talk about anxiety? The emotion. And also the first track on my album. What do you want to ask about anxiety?
So I'm going to ask you we're going to go track by track because this is the breakdown, a Music Mondays exclusive segment. We are going to go track by track. And I want you to tell me, especially with this album, there is lore behind I Followed the River. And I want to hear it, as do the listeners. So I want to know just a general, how you describe each track, your favorite things about the track, and how that track fits into the lore. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to provide like a one-to-one as to how the tracks line up with the lore, because it's not telling like a linear narrative. It's much more of a vibes-based narrative. It's an emotional narrative. But yeah, I'll try to kind of connect what you're hearing to what the overall impression you're supposed to get from the album is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a one-to-one, but yeah, just how it branches into it. I just saw Nature Player bought your album. Your album is Nature Player approved?
Yeah, I do have the Nature Player approval.
Shit. Sorry, that just caught me off guard. I was just like, that's Nature Player's icon right there. Woo.
Yeah, sometimes I still get a little starstruck just being friends with Nature Player. Because to me, he seems like a real artist. I don't know. I don't feel like a real artist. Nature Player's solo project is like a real album, and was very inspirational to me while I was creating this album. He created essentially like what is one long flowing song with his EP solo project. It's called Solo Project for clarity. I'm not just calling it generically a solo project. His solo project is called Solo Project, which you should listen to as well as I Followed the River. But yeah, go listen to Nature Player, everybody. But now it's time to talk about me.
Yes. It's Lil G-Mills time.
That's right.
Nature Player actually already had his time in the shine.
Yeah.
His time in the sun.
Wait.
With the Lab Grown episode where we broke down Solo Project. So
no double dipping.
Yeah, no double dipping. You can't come on this podcast, Nature Player. We already did it.
Stop allocating
it's Lil G-Mills
my time. Anyway.
All right. Yeah, let's get into it. Sorry. Intro, Anxiety, featuring Only Ferns.
Featuring Only Ferns. Yeah, so I guess the first thing to mention is that this album has collabs on it, which is not the case for any of my other albums. They've been strictly solo efforts for the most part, except for one feature from my friend Melody on an early album. But I had a vision of making a more collaborative and specifically cinematic experience with this album, and it's supposed to be a horror movie. The album is supposed to be a horror movie in album form, and while I've left the lore unspecified up to this point, I would actually like to delve into it a little bit as we go through this. But Anxiety is definitely setting the tone for the album and is kind of supposed to feel like a horror movie trailer. When Fern sent me the original stems that she was working on and suggested that I use them, I immediately latched onto it because it was exactly what I needed. Because I could envision the horror movie trailer as I was listening to like the booming bass drum that she lays down. So the structure of the song is a joint effort. The first part is a collage of sound with this really high-pitched whine that I actually created without even being able to hear it. I was mixing in an Audacity project without any sound outputting. So I was just kind of blindly creating sounds, and that whine, that really high drone that gives you anxiety is something that was produced out of that. And then it drops into a bass section where there's this loud booming bass drum and trap hi-hats and weird skittery rhythms. And then it all kind of just like collapses into this burnt to a crisp breakcore noise, just wall of chaos. And that's your intro to the album. It's kind of supposed to feel like you're following the river. You're supposed to be wondering, where am I? What is the danger here? Why do I feel so anxious? And if that's what catches your attention, then the rest of the album is going to be something that is very compelling to you. It's supposed to be a sort of natural continuation of these unresolved feelings.
Yeah, and I would say the production, without knowing the intention, does definitely come across. I mean, throughout the whole album, it comes across to the listener personally, without like your knowing your intentions, comes across very clear. Like, this is, you're kind of just like, it's like that, yeah, like the trailer or the intro to like any horror video game where it's like, we're just going to drop you into the bullshit right now, and then we'll take a step back. But first, here's 2 minutes and 39 seconds of just like chaos.
Yeah, it's definitely supposed to announce the weirdness and the ambition of the album, because it covers a whole lot of different sounds right from the beginning. So I think it creates a cohesive atmosphere while also showing you like it's not going to converge on anything right away. It's going to take some concentration to figure out where all of these different ideas are coming from.
Would you say that the high-pitched whir that you accidentally made, that you couldn't like hear that you made it, is that your favorite thing?
I really liked that it came out the way it did. And I think the way that it's integrated has been very satisfying. And to hear people's reactions to it and to hear that their dogs barked and stuff over it, that was super rewarding to hear. And I think it means that it served its purpose, because it's not a sound that you would want to listen to for very long. But I don't torture you with it for longer than I feel like I need to. Just long enough for you to start getting some anxiety, like the sound is never going to go away.
And then we move into track 2. Didn't ask feature. Who is this?
Yeah.
Ivahka Glass?
I'm pretty sure it's Ivahka Glass. There were a lot of collaborations on this album, so I can't remember all of your names. But yeah, it was Ivahka. She turned in a fantastic vocal performance for this song, which made it really easy to mix and work with. I pitched it up and I threw some effects on some of the layers, but other than that, I did fairly minimal vocal processing to get the effect that I did. Yeah, it's a loud, banging industrial trap beat that has a whole bunch of scratches and screams and weird percussion, and it's supposed to be one of the more accessible songs on the album. And if you find this inaccessible, then you're probably not going to have a great time listening to the rest of the album. This is not a pop album. This is the poppiest that it gets. Your bars on this album are on this track are devastating. I really, really love the lyrics. Hopefully I can get those published somewhere someday so that you can actually read along with them.
Yeah, no, I can send them to you. You can put it on the...
That's a good idea, actually. We should do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just loved everything about this vocal performance, and it fits the song so well. And you mentioned the first time we did this interview, we did this interview once already.
Oh, spoilers.
Oopsie. That I didn't give you much in the way of like direction for what the album was about. And I didn't let on at the time that there was already sort of a story in place, because I picked you because I felt like you were the right person for the job. And that's how I chose all of my collaborators for this. I wanted you to know all that you needed to know to turn in like an authentic performance, because I was really thinking about myself as like a film director on this project more than anything. Like, I'm also an actor in the story. Like, I have a cameo like a director would, but I'm not exactly playing the main character, so to speak. The main character is the person listening to it. But anyway, yeah, you delivered exactly what needed to be for this song. And I think it fits in place perfectly. And that's why it's the second track, because it just leads you right in. It's exciting. It's short. It's punchy. It's noisy. And yeah, originally I meant the song to be longer, but I'm actually quite happy that it's kind of just like the 2-verse chorus thing that it is, because it just kind of works.
Yeah, that is one take, I believe. Or the original version I sent was one take. I might have done separate takes just since it was someone else's album, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I should probably make sure I'm breathing the best during every single line humanly possible. But like most of my shit, I do in one take. And I think I can do that song in one take for sure. But the pitched up vocals you kind of make me the devil on the listener's shoulder, I feel like.
Yeah. You definitely become evil sounding, and it's like this manic energy to it. Like you hear like you're listening to somebody going crazy, and that's exactly what I needed. This album is insane, to say the least. Like, it's certifiably insane, and I didn't want my collaborators to hold back on that stuff. And so the fact that it was one take honestly just fits perfectly, because that's exactly what this project needed. Like, I didn't want to overwork any of these songs.
Yeah, and I like had considered doing like harsh vocals and things like that, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna do clean vocals, and you pitch it up. But there might be a time in which there is a different vocal mix of Didn't Ask, where I do some harsh vocals, because I feel like that would have fit very well.
That could be sick. We could do a VIP for sure.
Yeah, make it the bonus tracks from when people actually buy the album. They can hear.
Maybe we just have to release a full remix album.
Much to consider. Well, there was supposed to be a visual element that came with it, which can always come in post. There's always more to do in post.
Yeah, I still have ideas floating around for that. To the listener who doesn't know, I recorded many hours of footage over the past year, with the intent of including it in this album release as a visual companion. But a lot of things fell apart in my life while I was creating it, and so I didn't end up having the time or the resources to put that together. But yeah, more on that to come.
Yeah. All of that stuff, I believe, is still in my hard drive, so we're good to go. If that comes back up, listener, it's in my hard drive. Laura, it's in my hard drive.
I have it backed up too, don't worry.
Excellent.
Listener, it's in your hard drive as well.
That's why nothing's running, is there's 25 gigabytes of Lil G Mills footage in your tiny ass little computer. You need to upgrade.
Local storage isn't going to cut it anymore.
Sorry, this podcast is sponsored by hold on, let me check who. I'm going to edit this so that I say the word after, but I'm going to check who makes my hard drive. Hold on. WD. This podcast is sponsored by WD hard drives.
Yeah, that'll hit for sure.
Excellent. So, wow, what a pitfall of a segue.
I'll say.
But let's get into the third track, Pitfalls.
Yeah. So Pitfalls is named after Pitfall, the originally Atari 2600 game. I made Pitfalls on my phone, which is something that I'll point out for the songs that I did make on my phone. A lot of these songs were made in Ableton. Some of them were started on my phone and finished in Ableton, and some of them were finished in Audacity without any beat grid or anything, just lining up waveforms. But the process for creating this one was basically just sitting in a dark room at night, very late at night, and all throughout the night, I was mixing this on my speakers very quietly. And I was kind of just like bathed in this Stygian darkness while I was making this song. There was kind of like a green aura from the LED lights I was using. And I was in a pit. And so I called this song Pitfalls because it seemed fitting. It's another boomy, loud trap beat. This one's a little more straightforward, I think. The sound palette that it's using is very kind of like 8-bit, kind of like low resolution, bit crushed sounds. And it's pretty simple. The most unique thing about it is the sound choice, pretty much. But it was one of the first songs that came together that made me feel like this album had a direction, I guess. And it started getting me to link up a lot of the different concepts that I wanted to include in this album. The story of Pitfall 3D, which is what I was referencing with the name of the song, is Pitfall Harry goes beyond the jungle. He's exploring in the jungle and he falls through a portal and ends up in this alternate reality where there's a war being waged against this civilization of peaceful people by this scourge. The enemy is just called the Scourge, and you have to fight back against the Scourge and their attempts to enslave the whole of humanity. And that whole hero's journey of like going into the woods and falling into a portal to another reality has always kind of stuck in my mind. And just like the concept of portals in general is really what marks this album in my discography. I think like the album is about portals. It's about evil coming through a portal. It's about going through a portal to somewhere unfamiliar. There's no track on the album that explicitly refers to these portals, but the feeling that you're supposed to get throughout the album is that there's kind of like this alien or chaotic energy that's kind of like just beyond your horizon of understanding, and like maybe the album itself is what's the barrier between you and that other world. So Pitfalls for me kind of represents this starting point of like falling into this alien world and finding it unfamiliar.
And then we move into Headhunter, track 4. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Headhunter is kind of just hella fun. Headhunter is a quick breather. It's definitely a more beat and loop based song than a lot of the other tracks. It's made entirely out of splice loops. It's a song that I made while I was making a lot of other really angry songs. And even though Headhunter just kind of has like an aggressive name to it, it's not really about hunting anyone's head. It was actually more about like getting my head cleared for a second and like realizing that I had been so angry and kind of trying to turn that energy into something redemptive. Basically, Headhunter was just a way for me to get back into music for music's sake. It was me hunting for a sound, and I think I found that sound with Headhunter, and I didn't have to do much to it after I got that first arrangement out from it. Like, it really is just like a bunch of splice loops in a box, and I think that the sound choices work really well together, and I made an edit here and there and added a few extra layers and manipulated some things, but other than that, the mix I feel like is really clean, and it's just a fun bassy beat that has a bit more melody and a bit more space to it than a lot of the other songs on the album. So I really like Headhunter.
Yeah, it's that like very accessible sound to get. It's probably because of splice loops, because how like you didn't really doctor the loops too much. Were they just like the loops as is?
Yeah, they're pretty much just unmanipulated. They're just loops.
Yeah, which
I don't think you would pick out from just listening to the song, because they fit really well together. Like, it doesn't feel like there's something just popping out of nowhere. Even though literally I am kind of just like turning on and turning off splice loops, but like for every 4 bars, it feels like there's a natural development happening. The song doesn't stay still for too long.
Yeah, and I think that's because like, you orchestrated it. It's coming from your mind, and you've done more complex production prior to that. So you have like you already have the tools. So if you're doing like just arranging loops, like, that's all just like easy peasy.
Yeah, it's a way of making songs that I used to feel really guilty about sampling, especially like sampling so transparently. But like, I think, yeah, it was kind of a stepping stone for me coming back to sampling and feeling more comfortable with like knowing that no one could make this song except me. It's like the most me it could be. And that's kind of the whole idea of sampling. It's like the convergence of all of these other influences into a place that really only you can conduct it. So, yeah, I was satisfied with Headhunter, and it feels like a nice revisit of some kinds of music that I used to make.
A good check back in with those skills, like after all that time. Good publish check back in too.
Yeah, just kind of deepens like what Lil G Mills can be.
Absolutely, because the future has to come. There we go. Got it.
Yeah, the future has to come.
Yeah, so we get from this, check back into sampling from you, and then we have the future has to come. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the future has to come is not like anything I've really made before. It has basically 2 sections to it. It starts out with an almost inaudible, to the point where I'm sure that some of the audience won't actually hear it the first time. There's a voice or a creature vocalizing some kind. It's actually just my voice, but don't listen too hard to it. There's something squicking at you, like a clicker from The Last of Us. Like there's some monster kind of whispering in the darkness that you don't want hearing coming towards you. And then the song just drops in, and it's this loud, just crashingly abstract trap beat that starts and stops and goes into silence and comes back. Just like these really aggressive future, like just bass sounds, just distorted bass and heavy percussion that kind of just forms into something that's barely music. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this, is like really test the limits of like what I consider to be my music. And so that's why it's called The Future Has to Come. It's really about like the inevitable. It does. The future, it's not already written, but whatever is going to happen is going to happen. So it was kind of just like me deciding, all right, what if I just took a step forward with my music? What would it try to sound like? What if it had this pretense of already coming from the future? And so it's a very like weaponized song. It's sharpened to a point. It's an instrument to serve a purpose, and there's something like kind of cold and utilitarian about that, and that's what I like about it. Oh,
yeah.
and also The Future Has to Come was made on my phone for the most part.
Because the future really is here. You can just make music on your goddamn phone.
That was another idea that was kicking around in my mind while I was thinking about that title. Because it is absolutely insane and ridiculous that you can just make music and music like this on your, to quote David Lynch, fucking cell phone.
Like, yeah. I mean, personally, I cannot use my phone as a DAW. It stresses me out. But I need the space to move around. But
that's how I started making music. I tried to make music on my laptop first and never got anywhere, but like having GarageBand in my pocket just made it so much easier for me to turn ideas into finished ideas.
I could never figure out GarageBand without having to Google it, so it always pissed me off. And I would close the browser and then open a new tab, and GarageBand wasn't already open. But nonetheless, The Future Has to Come definitely it's an insane track, and it's just like short, sweet, to the point. And like you said, it serves a purpose. And it definitely does. Like, especially coming off of Headhunter, it kind of cuts you back into the more abstract. As we move into track 6, Halo Eater.
Yeah, Halo Eater is the epic centerpiece of the album, really. If I am remembering correctly, Halo Eater was the first song that I made for the album. It was kind of like the guiding star for the rest of the album, because it is in a way, it's like the emotional climax of the album. It's extremely intense. It's a loud. All of these are going to be described as loud. All of these are redlining, of course, but there's this loud alien siren droning throughout the whole first thing. That's got like a whole bunch of like fluttery automation on it, and basically I just tried to like fill the entire noise spectrum with sound, and still try to make it hit. So like there's acid bass grinding underneath the whole thing. Not a real acid bass, just like a digital acid bass that I sampled and synthesized, resampled and synthesized. But yeah, it's supposed to be just like this nightmarish club beat. Like literally hell is rising up all around you. The sort of visual cue for Halo Eater is these pictures that I generated from DALL-E Mini over the summer of a monster breaking into heaven and trying to eat this giant halo. Like that was the visual inspiration that I had in my mind. So it's this huge, menacing, trappy, deconstructed beat for the first 3 minutes, and then it gives way to the first like what you would call a skit on a normal album, but it's more like a vignette. It's supposed to be like a cinematic scene where my voice tells you that there is a woman who lives in the woods and that it's real. I saw her. I'm referring to some other they who told us about this woman, but I didn't believe them when they told us. And you're just supposed to start constructing this story in your head for who the hell is talking to you, who the hell this woman in the woods is, why I'm telling you about her, just what is the story here? And as I'm talking, I sort of get cut off by my own voice screaming as there's this rising cascade of noise and almost like a walkie-talkie distorted piano recording that's just recorded straight off a phone that I've had in storage for years and years. So it's horrifying, really. I think. I don't know what it's like for someone to listen to it for the first time, but it really did give me chills when I was putting it together. Like, the screams are very real. They're very horrifying. They're my screams that I recorded when I was in anguish over my personal issues. And after all of the screams and the piano fade away, it gives way to another cascade of noise that's far more intense and harsh and just like all-consuming. And I mean, it sounds like the voice is going to hell. Like, it sounds like hell is here. It sounds like you've arrived in hell, and there is just this torturous noise all around you. And you sit in that for about 3 minutes, interrupted only by a vocal sample from Mick Gordon's GDC talk, where he explains his production techniques on the Doom soundtrack, where he says, "I want you to think of audio like water. It flows downhill." And then the noise starts up again and continues. So it's sort of like this twisted meditation on suffering. It was just it was the noise section at the end, as well as the other sound collages and interludes throughout the album, were the last thing that I put together while I was composing the album. So Halo Eater was basically finished as the 8-minute track that it is in the huge project file where I was finishing the whole album. Like, the album wasn't mixed and everything until I put it all together into one project file in Audacity. It was just like arranging everything into its cohesive master. So the album really is like one cohesive listening experience. It's supposed to be one continuous river from start to finish. And Halo Eater is kind of the epitome of that. It's sort of like the snapshot encapsulating the whole album in one place. So there's clearly something mysterious, something kind of demonic going on here. Thinking about women in the woods, you're supposed to be thinking about like witches and the devil. So if you're squeamish about those things, Halo Eater will definitely be kind of a threshold for you. But if you are, if you feel that you are in control of your conscience, then hopefully you have nothing to fear.
Sorry, I was trying to come up with a good segue from what you said. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it.
That's okay. It's not your job.
It is my job. I'm the host. Oh no! I've begun to drift.
There it is. Track 7. We've arrived.
Begin drifting.
We've drifted right into track 7.
Yeah, Halo Eater is that like immersive, expansive sound. That like, yes, if you are gonna listen to just one track on the album, you're only gonna do one track. Listen to that. I mean, it's 8 minutes long, so you might as well invest the rest of the time to listen to all the other tracks too. But yeah, it definitely feels like it was the starting point from everything else. Like everything else doesn't feel like derivative from it. What's the word I'm looking for? But like derived for sure in some way.
Right. Yeah, I think it definitely gets the whole point of the album across in a small space. Or at least it feeds you enough to make you question, like, what the hell is this? Like, what ideas are being connected here, and what is the mystery that this is trying to get me to solve?
Yeah, and it's also the it's not the first time your voice is on the album, but it's the first time you speak clearly. Ground the listener because like no one's spoken to the main character yet, you know. Uh, so kind of like for me, it was like this is the point where it's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I kind of know what's going. I can my gut knows what's going on now, at least, you know, and it's gonna be scary. But then we move into begin drifting. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Begin Drifting is one of the more straight up fun beats to listen to on the album, I think. It's another noisy one, and it's also inspired by the Doom soundtrack and even samples the Doom soundtrack to create this chainsaw sound that's in the like the end of the 4-bar sections. There's like this little turnaround fill that's a chainsaw. It's not actually a chainsaw. It's sampled from the Dune soundtrack and manipulated to sound like a chainsaw, which I thought was cool because Mick Gordon originally like had a chainsaw sound that he interpolated with the synth sounds that he was using to create that soundtrack. He like mixed them together using like some sort of spectral mixing. I don't know how you would do that. AI probably. But like literally combined the qualities of two sounds together, and I kind of returned it back into a chainsaw, and I thought that was sort of like philosophically sound. That was very satisfying to me. But yeah, Begin Drifting is just like this knocking, drifting beat that's heavily dependent on its noise and atmosphere and the distortion. And the actual music section of it is not too long before the sound all sort of just drops out, and you get a sample of a voice saying help me," like 7 times in a row. And then it goes into another sound collage, another sort of cinematic vignette. And this time it's my voice again, but much more distorted. And what it's telling you is that someone is hunting us because there's a government agency that believes that demons are real. And it's quite haunting if you're coming off of Halo Eater and realizing that like there's more to this story. There's been the woman in the woods, but now they're hunting witches. Like the US government thinks that demons and witches are real, and they're basically doing the Men in Black, but to people it thinks are fornicating with the devil somehow, which is kind of like a real fear of mine, that some insane like neo-religious cult is going to start taking over the government. And even if it doesn't, it sort of feels like our government is a cult in a way of its own, especially if you lived in rural Wisconsin while I was making this album. There's just, it's eerie, and there's something kind of like forbidden and inhuman about rural America, because of our history, our legacy with things like sundown towns. And it's kind of just like dealing with that legacy of horror that underlies a lot of what we consider to be like our folk history of the American rural culture.
Track 8, New Meta. Tell me about that.
Yeah, New Meta probably doesn't have as much to do with the story. Now that I've sort of injected you with like the lore in the previous 2 songs, New Meta is kind of just supposed to be a bit of a curveball. It's a clearing. It has more space to it. It's another more straightforward song. that's its main focal point is this kind of snaking 808 bass line at the end of it that plays a melody that I you know, compose through so that it doesn't repeat at all. And most of my music is really based on looping, so I don't do stuff like that a lot, where I write like a 16-bar melody line that has no repetition in it. So there's some interesting bass harmony, and that was really the new meta that I was thinking about as I was making the song. Like it's a very gentle song at first, as gentle as you get on this album, and then it just drops the bass on you, and now you're listening to this huge like body shaking distorted bass. And as an additional detail, this song was also composed on my phone. So like The Future Has to Come, I was also thinking about, you know, changing paradigms, and it is also a deliberate reference to Meta, the company, because I'm usually thinking about like the ways that technology is combining with new horizons of perception and sometimes dangerous states of consciousness. So new meta will heighten your paranoia a little bit if you're expecting it to get more scary, but it's holding off the scariness for now. It's sort of just a time for you to take a breather and have a conversation with yourself about what you've been listening to so far. And it's also pleasant to listen to.
And that leads into track number 9, Cheap as Fuck.
Cheap as fuck.
Fuck. We can say, if we're on YouTube, we can say fuck.
Cheap as fuck, or cheap as bleep if we're on Apple Music, is another unique beat on here, inspired by the likes of G. Jones and EPROM. It's a very like acidy beat, very like acid bass music, club music. It's deconstructed as hell. In the second verse, or whatever you want to call it, it sort of just like deconstructs itself, like you're listening through a malfunctioning amplifier or something. Like the whole waveform just sort of disintegrates, and it's a very, very involved beat as far as sound design goes. I think the Ableton project file had more than 50 tracks in it, which you might not really consider listening to the song itself because it sounds kind of straightforward. I think it has like a pretty sharp sound palette to it, but it is a fairly complex song. Like there's a lot of weird shit going on in there, and so that's why I basically repeated the same section 3 times, because I felt like it deserved it. It was intricate enough to kind of be rewarded by repetition, because you'll keep hearing more and more layers to it as you continue listening to it. So in that way, it's not literally repeating. Like I didn't just take the same section 3 times and copy it into place, but the backbone of the song pretty much remains the same the whole time. Oh, there's actually there's an interlude at the end of Cheap as Fuck. Okay, I couldn't remember if there's more to it. It's just one drone. It's a noise drone that kind of sounds like to me it sounds like an alien intercepted transmission or something. Like it just has like this ham radio, Morse code, don't know what I'm listening to, but I'm pretty sure that it's not of this earth feeling to it. Like a lot of this album was inspired by that headspace of like receiving an alien transmission. And the the noise drone was actually supposed to be the intro on the track originally, and in some mixtape versions of the album that I spit out before it was released, that drone was actually the intro to the album, but I think I found a better place for it at the end of Cheap as Fuck. It's another sort of vignette feeling section, but the content is you're just listening to this drone and hearing this like one continuous sound develop as the synthesizer builds and creates more noise, and just all of these sounds bouncing off of each other and sort of just like getting into your head. And you're supposed to wonder if it's like reprogramming you or something.
That drone really, it's fucking weird. It's a weird feeling, especially when you're listening to it on like good headphones. It's like,
yeah, it's a very stereo sound. It's like very spacey. There's definitely a lot of internal dynamics going on with that sound. It was one of the first sounds that I ever made off of my Push 2, which I owned for less than a year, and now I'm trying to sell again. But I bought a Push 2 to make this album because I had a little extra scratch for a while that now I don't. I've been desperately trying to get rid of it. I twisted a whole bunch of knobs to create that sound. It's a very dense, weird operator synth that I just try to cram as much like digital information into it as I could. These songs are all car tested and car approved in my 13 Dodge Dart.
ooh.
Which is now in the shop because I fucking wrecked it again.
Oh, that just means you gotta buy the album.
Please buy my album. All of my possessions are being liquidated as we speak. I might not even make it to midnight. See, do you like that? I did your job for you.
Oh shit! I was just gonna hit this vape really quick, and then I was just gonna say, and track 10.
Oh, we get vape breaks? I could have been taking vape breaks this whole time. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for HHC only. But yeah, so track 10, Midnight. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Midnight was like the second song I made for this album. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it is. I actually released an early version of Midnight and an early version of the first section of Halo Eater on Friday 13, which is a live set I performed at your Discord live show that we did back in May. This new version of it is much less sparse. It's still got the same overall theme to it, which is this sort of like mix between trap and dubstep. There's this droning, booming 808 throughout most of the thing that really just like slams on the root note for most of it. It doesn't have much of a bass line. It's just kind of like root note, root note, root note. And I added since then this resampled like chorus drone as well on top of that. So it's another like very space filling song that just goes hard as hell. Like I also added some like DJ scratchy stuff to it. So like there's this wiki rhythm going on throughout the whole thing. And yeah, it's just like a very intricate, overstuffed, maximalist trap beat that should really, you got to hear it if you haven't. Like I rock out to it every time that I listen to it. You just have to sit through 40 seconds of this very weird alien trap beat intro that is kind of supposed to test your patience before you're rewarded with Midnight in its full form.
Yeah, just weed out the weak.
Fuck them.
Get to track 11, which. Tell me about that.
Which is straight up evil. Which is not a song. It's a 5-minute sound collage, really. It has some music in the middle. If you consider like horror movie soundtracks music and like horror trailer soundtracks music, because that's basically what this is. Like this is like the middle section at least is just like very much a horror trailer for the album itself. There is a poem that I wrote and that I recite, that I recorded very much in like the witching hour, like between the hours of 3 and 4 on my roof in Wisconsin. And I think I set the buffer limit a little too high or a little too low or something. So there's this cutting in and out of my voice while I'm talking, and there's this the noise in the background cutting in and out in rhythmic intervals that was completely unintentional, and it was probably just a combination from me using a whole bunch of USB extenders and also the buffer rate limit going into Ableton while I was recording, and I just decided to keep all that in there because fuck it. This whole album is about artifacts and imperfection and randomness, and so it seemed thematic enough that I was just like, I'm going to leave all of that in there. But what Witch starts with is an even more abstract sound collage than that. Before the voice comes in reciting a poem, it's actually just a sound collage out of a whole bunch of varied sources. It's going to be hard to describe unless you actually listen to it, which I encourage you to do. It's explicitly about a portal. It sort of starts with the sound of this like young male voice going whoa, and then there's this all just digital chaos, like all these choppy, crazy, unrelated sounds like sparking off of each other. And it just kind of plunges you into this void of what the hell am I listening to? Which is in the preposition, not the noun. It was sort of my intention to like not make this explicitly about a witch right away. Like you don't know what the hell you're listening to or why this would be called Witch. It's just like a whole bunch of the most cursed sounds you've ever heard coming at you, and descends into this screaming of almost like a baby crying scream that is actually sampled from a video I found online a long time ago about a woman taking 5-MeO DMT and going to hell, basically. Like she's just in agony. Like you can tell that she's fighting literal demons. And that was just super, super haunting and stuck with me. And based on my own experiences with similar drugs, not 5-MeO DMT, but very powerful psychedelics, I kind of wanted to recreate that experience of like going to hell on a drug, or any like forbidden sort of outre experience that haunts you, that like really sticks to a certain part of you and defines who you are after that point. It is like a rebirth almost, and that space of expression is kind of very important to this album. And then finally, as my monologue ends, in the middle of which it starts a new monologue that's from an ASMR artist that I happened to find reading a piece of scripture from the Torah. And she's reciting in both English and Hebrew. Some of the words are in Hebrew, and it's kind of just built out of segues up until this point, and then you get a fairly unedited reading of the scripture that is both supposed to ground you and make you realize that this song is still about our real world and our real religions and our real history, while also still integrating all of these different aliens and unknowns and demons. And like it's really just supposed to be creating a whole bunch of polarities for your mind. Like, it's not really making any decisive statements about heaven or hell or suffering or anything like that. It's sort of just supposed to be placing all of these concepts at the forefront of your mind and asking you to struggle with them a little bit. So I was definitely fighting demons while I made this album, and that's why the cover is a literal depiction of hell. And so I wanted to spend the time kind of underlining something that's really antithetical to my usual philosophy of making music, and just like create sound for the concept of the sounds, and really just like make something active and participatory for the listener, and not give them any answers, but hand them the tools to start constructing their own meaning. Jen Finelli is the one who reads the scripture that I sampled, and I was fortunate enough to actually get her permission to use it. She was actually very excited to be included on the album. So shout out, Jen. Thank you so much.
So where does Jen post their videos?
She's all on YouTube for the most part, as far as I could tell.
Do you know if Jen has listened to the album yet?
I don't know, actually. I sent it to her once it was finished. I sent her an early version that I know that she did listen to, but I don't know if she's heard the finished album yet.
Just curious.
I am curious too. I hope that we get back in touch sometime.
Yeah. But then we move on to track 12, No Chance.
Yeah. Featuring Melody Jane, who's a good friend of mine, and was the first person that ever featured on any of my songs. She made Battery Decay with me back in the Ultimate Irony days back in 2020. But this is the second song that I featured her on. She plays guitar for it. She also played guitar for the other song. It was more of a harsh noise improv, though, whereas this one is more of a beat. It's cyber grind. It's my take on cyber grind anyway. Melody is a member of the band Thought Crime, if anybody out there is familiar. And they are a cyber grind group, and cyber grind and grindcore and metalcore were all big influences on this album. It was kind of me trying to take my music in that direction, and sort of like a more metal inspired influence direction. So it was a big honor to actually have Melody make music for me that I could include on this album. So she plays the guitar over this industrial trap beat with these hard hitting kicks, and I'm actually gonna listen to it real quick to just refresh my memory and for something to say. Oh yeah, I should also mention that like this is another track that like the acid bass influence is very audible. I had acid on the brain, not just the instrument, if you know what I mean. But as far as the structure of this song goes, there's a short interlude at the beginning, another vignette. This one is sampled from Terence McKenna. Unfortunately, I couldn't get his permission. He's dead. But it's a manipulated sample of Terence McKenna, like this radio distorted robot voice, Terence McKenna, kind of pitching up and down in this undulating way. And And honestly, it was just funny to me to include this. I've sampled Terrence McKenna before, and I think that his voice is distinct and hilarious, and it's funny to hear him talk about the things that he talks about in his own voice, because he's so sincere and so like knowledgeable and so like enlightened in his own way, and he's just like this little scrunched up nerd that like has taken way too many chemicals for his own good. So I kind of empathize with that for obvious reasons. Yeah, this is a song for you as you rise out of the bowels of hell that you've been in Witch, and it is now kind of like an escape anthem. Like it feels like this is a chase scene or something. Like there's a Terminator coming down the hallway to come kill you. And that's kind of like what the punchy inspiration is for No Chance. It's like, I'm trying to get away, but there's no chance. I think the first time we had a conversation about the song, we mentioned the imagery of like running from one room into another through a door, and then you look behind you and the door is gone and you realize you're in the same room that you were just in. And it's kind of like the that psychedelic claustrophobia that I try to capture at certain points on this album, like your own mind is creating some hell for you that you can't escape. There is a slight little reprieve near the end of the song. There's this little section where there's just a splice sample where most of the noise and the drums fall out, and you're just getting like this one like techno 4 on the floor kick drum beat, basically. The whole song I would describe as like metal techno is what I was trying to make. Like it's like my take on 4 on the floor dance music, but with that cyber grind influence. So there you go. Metal techno, No Chance. Featuring Melody Jane. Please go check out Thought Crime. Their band rocks. And they're going to be famous very soon.
Absolutely. If you don't check them out, you're a stiff.
That's right. I was going to say you're a sinner, but I guess it would be better and easier to just segue into the next track.
Track 13, Stiff. Tell me about
it. Stiff is called Stiff because of the vocal sample that I used on it. It's just a splice like rap loop that I cut up and turned into a bouncy trap beat. I really love vocal chopping. I didn't get to do it a lot on this album, so this is kind of where I let it really rip. But what Stiff starts with is another sound collage, and there's one sound collage I don't remember talking about, but I guess we'll get to it some other time. I think it's Began Drifting where it was. There's like a little ambient interlude with like a mono stylophone synth recorded from my phone with like police sirens in the background. And that's just the segue into it transitions into me, my distorted radio voice telling you about how there's U.S. agents hunting us. But on Stiff, there is this soundtrack of like somebody getting into a car and closing the door and starting to drive, and there's like more like alien radio transmission noises and like printer noises. Like I sampled a little printer for this and layered it with a whole bunch of other sounds to create like this alien scanner sound. And there's some distorted voices in here that are actually recorded from the time I was not arrested, but presented with a restraining order and thrown out of my house. So there's like actual cops on here going like 10-4. That was all stuff that I recorded. So my own life and experiences are integrated into this album. But the sound collage of Stiff is actually where the lore of the album kind of comes out, even though nothing is said. The end of the sound collage is basically the sound of a body getting chopped up. Or if you if you listen, like there's the sound of a car door slamming over and over, and then there's this, like sink rinsing sounds, and like from far away you can hear the sounds of like kids outside on the sidewalk, but like you're very much like inside, and there's just like this dripping, this repetitive drip noise, like coming from a faucet dripping on metal or something. And there's just like this horrible cutting and scraping sound that to me was explicitly the sounds of like a body being chopped up. And the way that ties into what the album is about is that the lore of I Follow the River, the actual concrete plot to it, is supposed to be about a character who gets hired as a cleaner for the mob. And a cleaner is somebody who disposes of bodies that somebody else is taking care of. And in the process of disposing these bodies for the mob, this main character realizes that they are in fact feeding a monster of some kind, like a real live demonic entity that lives in the woods and is kept underground and kept secret, and is possibly even known to the local government, the state government, and is an actual like ancient evil that is kept and has a power that they are trying to keep for themselves. So very much inspired by the plot of Doom and the idea of using hell as a resource. But really just kind of it doesn't need to be explicit for the point of the album to get across. It's clearly supposed to be about some kind of cult, some kind of evil occult organization that you are starting to see the cracks of, and you're starting to realize that your life is in danger because you now know too much about this ancient evil. And then Stiff itself, the song, is just a banging ass trap beat to get your blood pressure up while you wait for the album to start coming to a close.
I was thinking about the track as you were describing that. I was like, that does sound a lot like a body being chopped up. Huh. Whoa.
Yeah.
Because you didn't bring that up last time. This is new information.
Yeah.
Damn. What's next? UFO evidence? What is that supposed to sound like? Someone being abducted by an alien?
Yeah, kind of. Maybe not necessarily abducted, but it's definitely the sound of seeing a UFO and like maybe recording a UFO on your phone. And just being kind of like awestruck about it and like beholding something that's completely beyond your comprehension. It's not so much like the terrifying feeling that you're supposed to get from some points on this album, but it's in a way it's supposed to be kind of like readying you for the emotional climax of the album. Like it's a breather. It's just one ambient synth, basically. It's just one synth patch that's, for the most part, just playing one note at a time until it starts playing some harmonies at the end. But yeah, it's just like this very minimalist sound design piece that is called UFO Evidence because I felt like that really fit thematically. I just, yeah, I like that combination of words a lot. I think it's pretty to say. And yeah, the idea of UFOs has always fascinated me, and just like the concept of maybe there being something out there, and maybe even there being people who know that there's something out there and don't want you to find out, and they're keeping it from you. And seeing it for yourself actually sort of drives you insane because now you don't know who the hell to tell about it. Whether you just keep the secret for yourself and die with it, or try to reveal it to the world and be accused of being insane or something.
And then we move into track 15. Skip Tracer.
Skip Tracer, featuring aka Soleil, who is our friend on Twitter. Very active in the producer community that we're in. Soleil did vocals for this song, which is a massive club monster trap beat. It starts with a sort of classically composed introduction of a string section and a lot of like digital ambience and reverb and just like very somber mood setting, which was actually something that was supposed to feature more on the album. I ended up not being able to develop all of these songs to like the full complete state that Skip Tracer is in. Skip Tracer is pretty much the most complete and cohesive song that I created for the album. I spent like literally 48 hours straight on this song, like sleeping for like 2 or 3 hours at a time, just working on this song. I really got obsessed with it for a while. And then, I shopped it to Soleil and she really liked it. And so her vocal performance is stellar. It fits exactly the feeling I was going for with this song, which is kind of like Didn't Ask, like this barely contained manic energy, except instead of being like confident and braggadocious like it is in Didn't Ask, it's like much more desperate and sort of resigned. Like it's more somber. It's the song itself is Skip Tracer is sort of just like the idea of stalking someone, basically, like missing someone so much that you would stalk them, which is a dangerous concept to play with for sure. I don't want to like sympathize with the idea of an abuser too much, but I have to sympathize with myself when I've been emotionally uncontrolled and I've done things that I've regretted. And Skip Tracer is about all of those uncontrolled emotions and just like, watching yourself fall out of control and like trying to find your way back to yourself. I think I broke down what Skip Tracer means last time, so I'll do it again here. The actual meaning of Skip Tracer, the phrase Skip Tracer, is a real job, and it's usually a private detective or someone who is hired by a legal team to find someone who's skipped out on their payments, or if they've skipped bond, then a Skip Tracer is someone who goes and finds them. So it's a real job, but the concept of Skip Tracer, the song, is more about like the idea of doing that, but just for yourself, like hunting someone down just to see them, just because you miss them so much. Like that's what the whole song is about.
Damn, yeah. I had assumed that Skip Tracer was like some kind of technological term, and then you're like, no, that's a job.
No, yeah, it almost sounds like Blade Runner. Like yeah. I think Blade Runner must have been inspired by the phrase Skip Tracer, because yeah, it sounds like something cyberpunk-y. It sounds like something futuristic.
Yeah. Yeah, that song is definitely like the cold end of the vocal performances in the album. Of like I came in hot and braggadocious, like you said. This one's just like a lot more. It's very fitting to have that energy closer to the end as we move into All of the Time. All the Time. I almost said all of the time. Then I stopped myself.
Yeah, All the Time almost had the subtitle Just the Beginning. I almost considered calling the song Just the Beginning, which is ironic because it's the last song on the album. But it's supposed to feel like the beginning of something new. And All the Time is a very unique song for me. It's another one that I made on my phone, but this one is much more orchestral than most of the songs I make. It ends the album on a much more hopeful note than you might expect from the journey up until this point. I planned that. I knew for a long time that All the Time was going to be the last song on the album. I had the melody and the overall arrangement of All the Time in my head, like the sound choice mostly in my head for a while before I actually made it. And I was really happy that I got to fulfill that vision in a way that was pretty close to the way that I envisioned it. But yeah, All the Time is supposed to be the end credits to the film. It's supposed to be the rebirth after this huge emotional journey that you've been on. And it's not the end. It's just the start of something new. And the whole album, the whole river, is supposed to be playing with the concept of time itself. Like, you can listen to this album straight through from beginning to end and then restart it from the beginning. Like, it ends in C major and it restarts in A minor. So it's the relative minor. So it just flows right back into where it started. And that's kind of the nature of the journey of I Followed the River. Like, it's supposed to be a complete circle. And kind of like trying to find enlightenment itself. Like, the journey is not the destination. Like, you're always already there. Wherever you are, that's where you are. That's who you are at this moment right now. That's the present is eternal. At these points in time that we feel like are separated temporally is basically just an illusion. Like, our memories don't go anywhere. We're always living out our memories, and we're always living out the future. They're just invisible to us right now. And All the Time is supposed to be kind of that reminder of, like, you can find hope even when it's really, really dark.
Do you have any closing thoughts about the album?
I just feel really glad that this album exists, because I really did put my whole self into it, and part of me thinks I wouldn't be here if this album didn't get made. So I lived a lot of feelings that I don't want to have to live anymore. So I'm glad I put them into this place, because I want to leave it behind. And I want to help anyone else who's like going through something that feels like they can't even withstand, because I promise you can't. And I'm sorry that you're going through it, but yeah. I hope that if you're listening to this, that you live. Please do live.